guess what? The result was the paper of my students that we made a research of this was accepted in the National Conference on Language and Literature at USJR. So it was a good experience to have short-term program with Japanese, and then my grade 8 student made a research with me and they presented the research. So I would say I'm very fulfilled because we taught, we had teaching, we had extension, we have internationalization, and we had the research publication. And the better part of it was we had a chance to go to Japan with my colleagues. Perhaps you might have met her, Dr. Cherry Malake and Professor Jera Gumalal. We made a research together and we were invited to go to Japan. And very nice. Accommodation was paid by Shirley Ando because of the friendship and because of the memorandum of agreement we have to support each other. And a very humbling experience. I happen to be a visiting professor in Japan, and it's a different experience. No? If we have a meeting in UP, it's a different also having a meeting in Japan. So this is the meeting in Japan. And it was also published. And the paper is published in Japan. And it was a good experience to have my colleagues, all those people who helped in our service learning program, became my co-authors. Secondly, when I went to Japan as well, I met the very talented Dr. Jonathan Aliponga. He's a friend of Shirley Ando. So there's a Filipino community of professors in Japan. Now, he taught, maybe he's still teaching in Kansai University of International Studies. It's called CUIS. And he was thinking like, we should also partner. And we had a memorandum of agreement. And in our memorandum of agreement was included the following: exchange students, an annual international global forum. And usually the forum is related to poverty, justice, social justice, and others. So this is Dr. Hedy, and this is our Professor Claire Happiness, our resource person on poverty, and this is our Vice Chancellor for Administration, Dr. Wina Jera. She's very fluent in Japanese because she is a Mamoshu scholar. And very interesting, in our discussion about global forum, we need a translator because Japanese students understand English, but they would understand best if it's their mother tongue. So the program can be longer because you speak English and then suddenly the translator would say the Japanese language. Now, after the service learning experience we had with those students, we had 5 students became full-time exchange students. So it was a very good, maybe good effect to them because they came back and they became full-time students. People who came back were Maya Nishida and Kenya Watanabe. This other person is from Korea. The two are from, Chloe is from Otema University and this is from Kuwis, from Kansai University. So there were 5 of them who came back. So if you want to promote more international students, maybe we can start with a short-term program. Harapot ma-expose sila and they would appreciate, and then later on they can proceed to become a full-time student because this matters a lot to the world ranking, the length of stay, not just the short stay. And next is, after a while, when I became the oil coordinator, I realized nga we have inbound students, we have outbound students. Why not do a research of the experiences of these students, Pinoy students in Mokpo, and the Japanese students in the Philippines? So again, I taught in the high school. I told my grade 8 students class, this small group, there were four of them. Why don't we make a research of this so we can really support internationalization? And we wanted to know what are the experiences, the positive and maybe some trauma if they have any, and what can we do to improve the program. And my graduate students made it and they presented this in the PAGE conference 2 years ago. And you can see Dr. Edwin is the host, and we have Dr. Wani and Dr. Christine Haka is here together with Chen person, and of course my ever mentor, Dr. Lucerna. And these are the findings of the studies of students that went to Mokpo in Korea and Japanese students that studied in UP Cebu. For them, it's very beneficial to have exchange program because it promotes intercultural competence and they learn content in many perspectives, and most of all, survival skills. Like, for Filipino students, they know that the subject will be taught a little bit of English and Korean. But when they were in Korea, mostly Korean professors in their university would speak Korean language as their medium instruction. The reason is, well, there were a minority. There were only 5 or 6 of them. So, and they had to catch up. So how did they do it? They record, they Google Translate. At that time, Google Translate was the more reliable, and they studied again. And in the end, they're better in Korea now. So they can speak Korean, and some of them, they're scholars, by the way. The UP Cebu or the UP system paid for their airfare, their accommodation, they had allowance and experience also in Korea. What about for the foreigners? They came in 2018, so there was a challenge. There were no first year and second year at that time because that was the start of the K-12 curriculum, the senior high school. And therefore, challenge. When they came in, they had all major subjects, and major subjects meaning Philippine Constitution, biology, genetics, and the Japanese students that came here were communication majors. If they had mass comm, the problem was the focus is broadcasting already. So this is really a good for the or for the advisors in the program. Please, we need to consider this like what courses they would take up. So sometimes it could be the electives or the GE that we think that can have an international flavor. Some courses we have are very local because, for example, the Japanese involved in Philippine Constitution. Natural, local yung kayo siya. So it was also the challenge of a professor because how can they discuss Philippines Constitution in full English? That can be a challenge because it's always good to use the mother tongue when the discussion is local. So the professors had to, in a way, they adjusted. But they think the classmates are very hospitable and they love the very free and fast Wi-Fi. Well, in Japan before the university, Wi-Fi was strictly for their professors. But in UP Cebu, isang sa gawas na Wi-Fi. So they love the Wi-Fi and their classmates. But they were a bit adjusting to kanatong holidays. Oh, it's a holiday, so no classes. So for them, may klase. So that's something different for them because usually in Japan, when I stayed there as a visiting professor, wala kalay kultura anang make-up class. Like, make-up class na because most students in Otima University are working in the evening. Some of them, a very high percentage of Japanese students study in universities, they finance their own. So, swerte na kayo. Swerte kayo taga-city yung taga-UP nga walay bayan. Now, graduate students. So, for graduate students, we call it cooperate. So, if move up for undergrad, so we call it cooperate. Ako na time, ha? 40. So, Sun Yat-sen University came into UP Cebu for some linkages, and we are so grateful to them because they're the national university. And good thing, if you want to do linkages, try Kaohsiung because Kaohsiung is the sister city of Cebu City. So, easier to transact because they know Cebu City, and there are lots of benefits like a sister city. You can have exchange faculty, exchange students, which we experience as well. So this is Kaohsiung. Some pronounce it Kaohsiung. So for Kaohsiung, we call it cooperate, and they will give full support, financial support to master's or PhD students. And this is our graduate. She master's of education made in social studies. So when she went there, the advisor, she has 2 advisors, one from Taiwan and one from the Philippines. He is Mags, Professor Mags. So Professor Mags, these are the benefits. The professor can, the student can stay there for 6 months, 1 month to 6 to 12 months, depending on her choice. Basta kayo mag-research siya dito. And then the advisor will have a free travel expense, free accommodation 1 week before the defense or during the defense, another 1 week during the data gathering. And all of these are provided by the University of the Philippines. So very nice experience for the professor and the student. Right now, there's pandemic, so we do online winter school. So napagya po yun, Ana. But lately in UP Cebu, we don't offer online exchange because some of our students opt for the kanang modular approach. What if the students will not just stay for 1 month? Will travel lang siya because she would like to present her research. So we have this research or creative work presentation for international students. So it's a travel grant for graduate students. The price could range 30 to 50,000 depending upon the area. So they can get it if they would present their paper or poster presentation as well. And the process is the same. You apply, then you will receive a letter of acceptance. From my experience, they always get the letter of not confirmation. Okay, so they will release the funds. Normally, the funds are released before they travel, and then another like 70% will be received after they liquidate. Best practices and suggestions from me. Well, advise the students to get electives abroad for 1 semester, and program advisors, please always have this in mind. Where will the students would go? Which country would they go? And connect with them. Like for example, for our fine arts students, we have a plan that they would go somewhere in this place in Australia. So electives should be taken up in Australia, or some major courses may be taken up in Australia if the students would prefer. For graduate students, plan that your thesis is related to something international abroad. So which means the advisor in the Philippines and potential advisors abroad, they should plan so they can really do the advising together. Advising should be done before the defense and during the defense. Challenges in recruitment. Okay, here. First is, I'm very lucky that the UP Oil system is very good in their publication on social media. 5 days left. Some would want to study, some would not want to graduate, and elect wala, nalisod na, because if you are third year or fourth year, the courses are majors, and it's not easy to sacrifice majors or practicum. But there can be international practicum, or parents don't allow them kay only child or bata pa siya. So these are challenges that I experience. Another, for the Japanese, this is for my case only, not, I cannot generalize it for all. Some students have to save because they will finance their own coming to the Philippines. They work hard. Some were afraid because when I went to the Philippines, there was a time of Abu Sayyaf or the dengue, and the media, when they Google Philippines, it's always war. So they're afraid of their security. But the best thing about it is the semiotic representation of the Philippines or Cebu. It's always the beautiful beach, so they would go. And take note, February for Japan is their longest break, so perhaps you can consider doing some exchange programs in February. And it's cooler